talking about the pros and cons of creative CVs and should you bother. With myself, Evan, in this group there's Anthony Nyhan, Shane Crowley and Ross O'Connell. I'll hand you now to Shane, who will talk about various aspects of creative CVs.
Hi, thanks Evan. Basically, creative CV is a CV which applies for certain jobs. So a creative CV can include things such as photos, drawings, videos, and uses aspects such as Photoshop. It is mainly used in a creative aspect, so it suits jobs for, let's say, if you're applying for an art gallery, grand design, an ad agency, somewhere where you're supposed to be creative. While for jobs such as like a bank manager, an accountant, or a pharmacist, it wouldn't apply because the hiring manager in that aspect would be looking for a straightforward CV to the point with your information. Creative CVs, they're a good idea, but like I said, they only apply to that field. If I was giving advice on someone who's doing a creative CV, I'd acknowledge them that it is very time consuming, and to make sure that they follow the basic CV writing skills, such as your full name and contact info, highlight your professional accomplishments so that they know what you've actually accomplished in your professional career and you're not just yabbering around about hobbies and stuff like this and try to make it look too fancy, and to date your recruitment, when you've been recruited, when you were working, so that your recruiters, the people who are hiring you, have some kind of sense of your professional timeline. Some pros and cons of a creative CV. Ross can maybe tell you.
Yeah, creative CV is it's a good way to show off your personal skills. Like with making a creative CV, you can show off all your qualifications, and maybe if you're applying for a graphic design job, you could throughout the creative CV you could put in some of your previous work. This will show the employers how skilled you are at the job. It's also good for workers who don't have an extensive work history. So if they don't have much experience, it's a good way to show the employers what they are able to do with very little experience. A con then for CVs, I'll throw it over to Anthony.
A negative aspect of creative CVs are potential candidates sending in emails with a CV on it. These emails can actually be sieved out through information system applications. So unawares to the potential candidates, they could actually lose a position based on spelling or based on the criteria that they have in CVs. From that point of view, they're actually very outdated, sending in CVs through the post.
An example really where I think a creative CV actually came in and actually did its job was a man in India who had an interest in working in GQ. So basically he went about and created a creative CV where it was a GQ article but replaced with the information of his professional information, his professional timeline, all his hobbies and interests, and just basically had photos of himself and was styled in such a way that it looked like a GQ article. And basically from this it took him 3 weeks to create it, and from this he was able to get the job in GQ. So he didn't even have to go through an interview, and that was a good example of when a creative CV was actually was okay to use and it was in the required field. But like I said, it took him 3 weeks to create, and like you really would want to be putting in the time. Like as in you wouldn't want it to be tacky, I don't think either. Like as in you want your employer to pick it up and catch their eye. You don't want them to just put it to one side and be looking and wondering where all the information is supposed to be. You want the information to be laid out properly in a unique way so that it explains you and shows how creative you are on an aspect.
Creative CVs, another thing to take into account is the amount of time you're putting into making the creative CV actually worth the end result. So, for example, that 3 weeks with GQ, that worked out great for him. But if you do that and the magazine doesn't give you the job, that would have been 3 weeks, and it quite possibly could have been a lot of money, and it was only specific to that one job. So now he won't be able to use that creative CV for a different company. So that is
basically is very time consuming, alright? Well, I don't know about all of us, I'm not speaking on all of our part, but personally for me, creative CVs aren't exactly worth the time or the cost that they take to do. I think if you were going into that job field, straightforward CVs may be better off, and hopefully your interview goes well enough where you can elaborate on how creative you are. But I personally would use them, obviously, because the jobs I would be looking into would be in that field. At the end of the day, I wouldn't really recommend a creative CV, but I do see how good it can be for certain people.
Applicants' costs would be involved in companies' costs as also. If you send in a CV to large organisations, you would want to be seeking a higher position because they'll be sieved out. Lower positions, you can actually hand them in or through the post.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, my opinion, I think only for certain jobs would I recommend creative CVs. Say, for example, as earlier, an accountant or something doesn't really know a point, because all you need to do is just write down your qualifications on a normal CV, and the big companies that you'll be applying for, they have specific software which it narrows down who is the best candidate for the job. So if I had to make a creative CV, I'd only do it for creative jobs such as marketing or something. It'll be a good way to show the employers how creative you can be as doing that job.
So to summarise the question put to us, creative CVs, should you bother? Yes, in industry dependent, like the ones we mentioned with media or those technology companies, and no, in the more traditional professions such as accountants. Why these? Because in the tech, media and those social media companies, they're too similar in nature and they're very competitive, and the creative CV is a means of putting yourself before everyone else, or the noise of trying to get those jobs, and not so good for those industries like the accountants that were mentioned, is because they're more traditional and they kind of prefer kind of standard or the way things are with hiring with regard to CVs. So it's just sector dependent, and it's up to the individual themselves at a cost.
So basically that was our outlook on creative CVs and what we found from them, and we'd like to close with that or with our opinions. And thank you very much for listening. That's all.
Thank you.